In a previous example, we looked at an Android app with a single sensor, and now we want to look at one which has two sensors to see what little changes are needed in this case. The code can be found at the URL seen here. Okay, so in our previous example, we had an accelerometer, and that the values from that sensor had an X, a Y, and a Z. And so we've added to the accelerometer a pressure sensor. And so here it is in emulation, and we click on the ... and the ellipsis, and we can go to pick out virtual sensors, and the accelerometer was controlled by this first tab. As we saw previously, we can change the rotation. And that had effect on the X, the Y, and the Z here. And we could also move the phone. Okay. The pressure sensor will be here under the additional sensors tab. And here's the pressure, and it is in, I think that's hectopascals. And so then we can change the pressure. And we see that affected over here in the pressure sensor reading. You can do things like, write code to change its units or test for some limit, but in this case, we just wanted to sort of have a sensor and display the sort of default reading of that sensor. You can see here some of the other, a light sensor, a humidity sensor, an ambient temperature, and so on, some related sensors that are available. But I really just wanted to show you sort of two sensors in play. Okay, so the layout activity main XML, there's a display for the X, a display for the Y, a display for the Z of the accelerometer, and a display for the pressure. Okay. And then in activity main, one of the important things here is on this line 22, establishing the main activity to add the sensor event listener. We said when we do that, then it's going to force us, in addition to our usual on create, to have an on pause, on resume, on sensor changed, and on accuracy changed. And since we had on create and resume and so on, sort of more than just a simple on create, then we were working with this sort of late init. So we establishing a sensor manager, we're declaring that we're going to have one, which we will initialize later. Same thing for an accelerometer, same thing for a pressure sensor, and then these various text views. So this is announcing we're going to have them. We will have access to them in any of the methods, but we're going to declare them here, initialize them later, and then have access to them in any of our methods. Okay, so here we are in on create, our usual connect to the interface, the X, the Y, the Z, and the pressure text views. Here we set up our sensor manager, and then we use the same sensor manager to establish the accelerometer and the pressure. So this makes a little clearer the role of the manager, that it's going to manage multiple sensors. So one manager, but multiple sensors. Okay, so let's look at on pause. We don't want to be using the resources if the users pause the app. So we sort of unregister. So on pause is about the manager, telling it to stop. On resume, we're getting back, we're using the manager to reestablish our sensors. And so we have to do the accelerometer and the pressure. So when we had just one in our previous example where we had one sensor, this line was the same. When we're pausing, we work just with the manager. But when we're resuming, we work with we use the manager, but we are also working with our sensors. So we needed two lines here to bring back the accelerometer and bring back the pressure sensor. Here's our sort of main method here of showing the sensor, displaying the sensor results. And so, both sensors, if either sensor is changed, this event is called. So it has to handle the different sensors. So that is why we have the when statement. I always remind people who know other languages that this is a switch, and the switch is the when is based on the type of the sensor. So there are numbers associated for these, but I mean, I don't know them. So I just use the established constant here for type accelerometer and type pressure. So the sensor type accelerometer, then we know that the value has three components, and we're displaying the X, the Y, and the Z. When it's pressure, it only has one component. So we can't, both sensors are calling this, but the number of values will depend on which sensor it is. So we have to make this clear distinction in the when of which sensor we are dealing with. And when the accuracy is changed, I'm not going to do anything, but I must have it to satisfy the program. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you. It brings out the role a little bit more of the manager to have two sensors, and the resume is a little bit different because we're bringing back the individual sensors. The on pause is the same, and the on sensor changed sort of brings out why we were playing with that when, to have distinguish the different sensors and what we want to do in the case of the different sensors. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. Thanks much.